Howdy, it's mrpete222, Tubalcain again, and today's video is really nothing more than Tubalcain talking about his resources and the different books I like, magazines, and what I read. And this will be quite a long video because I've got a lot to show you, and I hope that some of you at least are interested in this, because I do in fact feel slightly sorry for anyone that does not read because they're missing so much. But Lindsay Books, Lindsay Publications, well, he retired. He didn't live too far from here, but he was a character. But if you have one of his books, his catalogs, do not throw it away because there will be no more. But there were an awful lot of books that he reprinted. They were all reprints. Many of them are still available, either used on eBay or someone bought up the inventory, I believe, so they're still going to be around, a lot of them. Some of the magazines I like to read are Classic Car is very good, and it has technical articles in there as well, so I like that. Belt Pulley, I think that's out of business, but that's a good one. Antique Power is one of the best tractor magazines, in my opinion. We've got both the Home Shop Machinist and the Machinist Workshop that are available on magazine racks, so those are good reading. Gas Engine Magazine is a good one. This is an older issue. The Grist Mill is the publication for Midwest Tool Collectors, which I am a member of, and it's always a very good book about old tools. This is a British book on tractors. They've got some good books over there. You know, their books are printed in a different size format. They don't fit on your bookshelves. So that's something they need to correct over there. Let's get these the same size. Alright, that's it on magazines for the moment. Let's move on to some of the other things here. I do have a Machinery Handbook. That's the Machinist Bible. Oh, I don't know what edition. That's the 11th edition. I've got about 3 copies of this. One in the bedroom, one in the computer room, and one in the basement. You can't get enough of those. And this is a handy little pamphlet. You've seen that before. Now let's take a look at some of the other books that I've got. I've got bookshelves all over the house. I'm in the basement at the moment, and this is just above my sink here. And these are books that I often refer to when I'm making videos, or just for the pure pleasure of reading them. So let me pull some of them down and show them to you. This Mark's Handbook is something like the Machinery Handbook. Quite thick and full of endless charts and graphs and information about just about anything you can think of regarding engineering, metalworking, and so on. So get yourself a copy of that. I don't know if they still print that. That's the 5th edition. I only came across that rather recently. Practical Shop Math. Here's a machine shop textbook. This Willard McCarthy was my teacher in college, a wonderful man. I've mentioned him before. Basic Machining Operations, McGraw-Hill. In my recent gear videos, I mentioned this, Gear Cutting Practice. That's only a $3 book. A lot of good books on gears. And the Treatise on Milling Machines by Cincinnati. I've talked a lot about this, and now someone has notified me that it can be found on the internet. You can download it or just look at it. I guess print it off too. Quite thick. But the one that is on the internet is much older than this. This is from 1951 or something like that, but the one on the internet is 1918. But there are quite a few that are available on Google Books or Internet Archives, I think it's called. The internet is a great resource. Here's a book on triangulation. That's mainly for sheet metal work. And you can see a child has had its way with this book. Use it for a coloring book. And a few pages missing, but I got it free. But that shows you how to do layouts. That's a good book. Here's another one on sheet metal. Air conditioning metal layout. Same thing. Must have belonged to the same parents who didn't supervise their children. The Essentials of Treg. That won't be something that anyone will want to read, but there's some good stuff in there. Geology, how did that get in there? I like to read about rocks sometimes. This is a book that would be used in a junior high general shop or in a small high school. Materials Handbook. I only came across this recently. That was only $2 on clearance. But anything you want to know about any kind of materials, like carbon dioxide, coffee, ironwood, fabric, sapphire, silver, stainless steel, well, even tobacco. That's a neat book. Here's a very old copy of the Brown and Sharp catalog from the 40s, but it's pretty interesting to look at some of these old tools. The Starett book for student machinists. This might be available yet from Starett, I don't know, but it looks a little antiquated. Before safety glasses, so you know that it's dated. We use that in the high school. Philosophy by Nicholson. That's a really good pamphlet. It was free. There's also one that was called The Use and Care of Drill Bits, The Use and Care of Reamers by Cleveland, I believe. I don't have copies of them. They were thrown away at the high school. This is a Lindsay reprint. Care and Operation of a Lathe by Sheldon. That's a good book, similar to How to Run a Lathe, but oriented around Sheldon lathes. And of course, here's the ubiquitous South Bend lathe book called How to Run a Lathe, and it's I got 2 copies. One of these I had when I was in high school. That was our textbook in machine shop, our only textbook. Lindsay has reprints, and they printed these by the millions in different languages, so they're available on the internet. There's an old Starett book. I keep those old catalogs. Lufkin, you know, they haven't made precision tools since about 1970. But they made an awful lot of, I've got a lot of Lufkin tools and I love them. I worked with a machinist who was a Lufkin fan, so I guess that's where I got started on it. There's even an older Starett book, and I think this is from the 30s. Yeah, 1938, before even I was born. That's a newer copy of South Bend. And this is the Lindsay edition, but it's 1942 edition of How to Run a Lathe. And I prefer the newer ones because you can tell the way the men that are dressed that this is really an old book. But it's been revised many times. Steam Engine Design, that's another Lindsay book. Files for the Farm, that's similar to Philosophy. This is an excellent book by Atlas or Craftsman on how to run a lathe. In some ways, I believe it's better than the South Bend book. Lindsay had the whole series of these pamphlets. This one was called Lathe Maintenance, but there are a bunch of pamphlets that are available or were available. These are some of the old books that I had at school. I think Central Steel is even out of business, but there's good information in there about steel and all the different alloys, and it's pretty much similar to the Ryerson stock list. I used to buy from both of those companies back when I was in my prime. And you've seen these gear books in my videos on gear cutting. This is really a good book, Machine Tool Operation, but there are 2 volumes. And I do not have the other volume. This is part 2, I guess. There's a part 1 also. Shop Theory. This was Henry Ford Trade School's book, even though it's printed by McGraw-Hill. And I've got another one of these floating around the house someplace that's in hardbound. And there was a complete set of these at the high school when I first started there, and that was the book they were using before I started. Electrical motor controls. I go to book sales, used book sales, and often pick up this kind of thing because nobody else wants them, or at a garage sale you get them for a quarter. Nobody wants them. And if I'm not there to pick them up, they get thrown away. The Wilkie brothers, who started Do-All, had this book printed, And it's quite excellent, really, although very old. And the Wilkie brothers had the Wilkie Foundation. Dual was the company that really got metal cutting bandsaws started. Bandsaws have been around for a long time, but they had the technology to weld blades where they didn't break, and that's what made their saws great. And I had a Dual saw at the high school. Wish I had one here. Metals and Welding, spiral bound textbook, and this was really from an ag shop because they did a lot of that work in the ag shops years ago before they turned it into horticulture. But they still teach all the shops in our local high school here in the ag shop. Metalwork Essentials. That's more about bending and drilling and all of that. General shop again. General Metals. That was like a beginning course in metals. And there's Introduction to Drafting. No CAD in there. Welding Skills and Practice. Again, a high school book. Mechanical Drawing. That does include CAD, even though that's an earlier one. Here's a really old machine shop book, but some good stuff in there, and a more modern machine shop book. This is out of a junior college. Pretty thick books. This is my dad's old drafting book, Technical Drawing. It's very good, but of course it's strictly triangles, T-squares, and pencils, but that's really all I know how to do. 56 Problems for Sheet Metal Work. Another drafting book. This is from NAVPERS. That's Navy Training Manual on Molding. Now, they had a lot of good manuals there, the NAVPERS. And some of these were reprinted by Lindsay. Here's a book on, you've seen this before, Fundamentals and Production of Design and Design of Castings. That's a good book. Pattern Making. That was my dad's book. There's his handwriting on formulas for core making. And believe it or not, IBM had a book called Precision Measurement in the Metalworking Industry, which kind of surprised me, and this is really a good book. That cost me 25 cents at a garage sale, but it's all about measuring. IBM. Okay, that's it for this bookshelf. I'm out of the basement and in the computer room now, and I do have, I'm not going to show them, but I have probably 40 books on airplanes, 30 books on trains, now more 50 books on trains, locomotives and all that, which I'm not going to show. Probably 100 books on World War II, which will not interest most of you, but I like to study that type of thing too. So I have a much newer edition here of Machinery's Handbook. That's the 22nd, but even that's probably not all that new. And that can be found on the internet now, but you have to pay a subscription, I believe. But I'd rather have a paper copy. I don't go for that, looking at it online. It just takes too long, too cumbersome. I'm a member of the Midwest Tool Collectors, as many of you are. And this is the Stanley Guide to Hand Tools. That's by John Walter. That's virtually the Bible on collecting Stanley tools. And this Martin J. Donnelly out of New York, and I have met the man. He's a dealer in fine antique tools. I don't mean $10 items, I mean $1,000, $5,000 items. But he produces this catalog every year, and with wonderful dialogue in it too, just showing all kinds of marvelous antique tools, and I'm so glad that these are still being preserved. There's one of my older tool collector book, and then this is a good book on Stanley tools. 150 years of the Stanley works. That's pretty much a history book on Stanley tools, but very interesting about the factory and all of the personnel and the men and marketing of the Stanley tools. It's quite cold out today. It's about 10 degrees, so I'm in my unheated garage, one of my garages, and up on these shelves can I go up that high? Yeah. Well, there I got some airplane models. I never did get together. But in those books, those magazine boxes up there, I have ancient issues of popular mechanics from the 40s and 50s and popular science, and I like to look through those. And there's a big batch of my train magazines, or train books rather. And I've got those rather recently. I haven't even looked at them yet. There's another batch. So I like those old train books and airplane books as well. This whole box of books was only $1, but I've got machine shop practice in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 volumes, but there's a couple volumes missing. Here's one on high-speed diesel engines. All good stuff. Basic hydraulics, electric motors. Oh, there's one of the shop books. Pratt & Whitney catalog. Boy, that's old. And what else we got here? Sometimes I forget what I even own. Machine Designer's Guide. That's more mathematical, and then another one on hydraulics. Here is a box of rather interesting pamphlets and advertising information. There's one on diacro shears. A lot of you have heard about that. Here's a closing lathe long before they made the one that I have in my basement. More diacro stuff. There's a diacro spring winder. This guy was an inventor. He's dead now, but so he had a lot of esoteric items that I bought. Look, there's a quick change gearbox for your Logan's or Atlas lathes for $85. More diacro, machinery catalog. Punching, I think that's diacro also. Yeah, that's all diacro information. I used to have a lot of diacro tools before it became diacro Hudai in my school shop. Original brochure for an Amico shaper, little bench top mill, Benchmaster I guess they called it. You can tell that's during the war. They got a woman running a punch press. Milling machines, oh, closing mill. This guy must have been in the market for buying a milling machine because he had a lot of different brochures on milling machines. There's just a milling head, convertical. A rotary table. That's like my Atlas rotary table. Brown's milling tool. I know this is boring for some of you, and I'm just about through. Some repeats in there, it looks like. Okay, that's it for that box. I'm out in the other garage now. There's another batch of books that I haven't gotten to yet, but most of those are biographies. I love to read. My lips are so cold I can't hardly speak. I like to read biographies of great men, and they may be men in show business or movie stars and all of that. So there's one on Houdini up there I got to read yet. Now I'm really in the archives. I'm up in the attic of my old garage, and I've got all kinds of old catalogs there. There's a Welch Scientific, and there's some textbooks on physics that I sometimes have to look at. A little too complicated for me, but there I got all kinds of other books, such as oh, there's another pattern making manual, and air conditioning. I'll probably throw that away because now I got a new air conditioner. It'll never need service again, hopefully. Aircraft something. Repair books, more welding books. Small engine books, other auto books, a lot of good stuff. Now I'm in my bedroom. I like to read about great men. Some of them are controversial, so I don't want to discuss that, but I've read many books on Henry Ford. And recently, as you well know, I was in Dearborn, Michigan at the Ford Museum, and I forgot to thank you men out there. I had invitations from about 4 or 5 men in the Detroit area wanting to meet me at the museum. One even offered to pay admission, or he had a pass to get us in. Another man was a Ford engineer, and he wanted to take us to lunch, and then yet several other emails. And thank you guys for all of that. And I'm sorry we couldn't get together, but I was traveling with a friend, and there were time constraints. But well, so this is a Floyd Clymer book. He had a lot of good books too. That's on Henry's Model T, and there's another Ford book. And I sure admired Edison, but I think he was controversial as well. And there's old Nikola himself. Over the years, I've had quite a few sets of these Audell books. These are really old ones, but some of them were about electricity and drafting and all kinds of different subjects. And here's another Army book, United States Armed Force Institute on Math for Technical Schools. That's a good book. And there's the old Ford, the Ford motor car and truck and tractor book. I'm at my bookshelves now. I'm at my wife's dresser now. I hope she doesn't get mad. But for those of you that wondered what I look like, there's my picture. It's not too old of a picture. That was a school picture. They took your picture every year for IDs or yearbook and that. But I even had my picture framed in a tool type of picture frame. That's kind of neat. I got a lot of books on models. There's model making. That's a Lindsay reprint, but an older reprint. Here's another Lindsay book, the Model Engineer's Handbook. Another Navy training course. This is restricted, so I can't show that to you. Otherwise, I would leaf through the pages. Henley's Formulas. This book has been out for forever. But it's got formulas for everything you can think of, starting with beverages, cosmetics. Well, we don't want to do that, but fireproofing, gold, all kinds of things. So if you've never seen this book, get one or look at it in the library or something. I used to collect all the gun digests because I got guns too, I'm like you guys. But this is Gun Digest 3rd edition. It's a mere pamphlet. It's the only Gun Digest I got left. Hot air engines, and I built that engine. You've probably seen that out of this book. These are British books. T Publishing are just wonderful books, but they're hard to get a hold of, and it's just difficult to order them from England. You can get them, but it's a bit of a pain. This is also T. Machinery for model steamers, Model Engineer's Handbooks, model engine making. I've got a lot of stuff on old hit and misses too. Model stationary engines, steam engine projects for a young mechanic, 1871. Shoot, the Civil War was just barely over. This one's water damaged. Got wet at a flea market, I think. This company here, Shire Publications, and they got a website, but they got some neat books. I'll give you the website because it's right here, I think. Yeah, www. They got a whole line of these books, perhaps 50 of them. I got a lot of the old catalogs, but all of the companies that made engine supplies and models and that. PM Research, they're still around. Large gas engine design. Tiny Power, I believe they're still around, but they're not in Branson anymore. Oh, here's an earlier manual for a Volkswagen Beetle in German. Never have read that. An original Ford and Tractor manual. That's neat. That's the manual for my Kohler engine electric plant that you've seen. Brunel models, they're out of business now. This is a neat old book. Reynolds, Corliss, Alice Chalmers engines. It's pretty well beat up, but it's well over 100 years old. It's falling apart, but these are lithographs, cuts, they might call them. Gas engines from the Lost Technology series. Out in the garage I got a whole pile of these. This is thread cutting, but they were called Machinery's Yellowback series, 15 cents. I had these on many subjects. In my bookshelves I have a lot of manuals for tractors, repair manuals. And what else we got here? Accuracy for 70 years, that's Pratt & Whitney. Forged and Farming. Modern Farm Power by John Deere. I think that's John Deere. Yeah. It's a new generation tractor on the front. Diesel and high compression engines. High speed diesel engines. There's a manual for an old Farmall H. Pretty rough shape. That's the manual for a 630. I sold the tractor, still got the manual. Manual from a B. Fairbanks Morse. My father-in-law used to work there. Fuller and Johnson engines. I used to have several of the Delco light plants. Delco light, Delco, I don't know what that is. You know, I got stuff here, I don't even know what it is. Tools and supplies. There are many reprints that I get from Midwest tool collectors. Steam engine design. I think this is the one that was my dad's. Yeah, there is my dad's. He had a rubber stamp. Norman Frederick Peterson. (1907). It's about the year Dad was born. There's a real old Stanley tool catalog. Another one. This guy's funny. Roger Welch. Old tractors. He wrote several of those books. Another Starett catalog. Starett. Cole's Power Models. They sold the entire Stewart line. And there are some more repair manuals. On this shelf, all of my tractor repair manuals. I got a lot of them out in the garage too. More IT manuals, antique power, and then here's a whole bunch of the 8N, 9N tractor magazines. They were magazines. There's a whole shelf of World War II books. I got another set out in the garage, but by a different publisher. And on the bottom shelf here, these are all tractor books, not tractor manuals, but tractor books, and there's a lot of them. And gas engine magazines. That big Wendell book there on the end, that yellow one, is a really good one. I'm just about done. Thank goodness, some of you are saying. This is a good series of books on airplane models and little engines. Howard Hughes. This is really a good book, The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes. Also read about the other man. I got to think of his name now. Yeah, forget that thought, I guess. This is a very good book. Those Inventive Americans. Edison's on the front. Trailblazers in Technology. I'm extremely interested in how the timeline of technology. This book, Inventors and Discoverers, It's missing the title page, but a lot of good stuff in there. The how and why of mechanical movements and aero engines. Alright, this is the last shelf now, and I'm not going to go through these, but I like to read about great men, as I mentioned, and there's other books here, a lot of good books on airplanes. I also got some books on bad men, like Mussolini, who they hung by his feet, and Hitler. I haven't read that one yet, but I've read a lot of books on him. A lot of good books. Like I say, I go to every library book sale and every garage sale, and that's how I get all of these. So I mean, everything you've seen today is probably $100 worth. So I hope you like my little library. I didn't bore you to death, but I hope also that I have stimulated some of your interests in these subjects and in reading. So this is Tubalcain from his bedroom saying so long for now.